So your mom's in the living room helping Freddy pick up his toys. She's going to tuck him in here in a little bit. I'm supposed to tuck you in first. So good night. Sleep good. Consider yourself tucked in. See you tomorrow. Boomba.
That's really loud, Dad, and kind of scary.
I've seen way scarier things than thunder, son. Believe me.
Well, actually, now that I think about it, it's kind of cool. It's Halloween. It's supposed to be scary.
Well, then it's okay that you're scared then, I guess.
Not too scared. My dad's Batman.
No, he's not. Just because he has a bat cave doesn't make him Batman.
Why are you talking about yourself in the third person?
See, I want to make sure that you know the difference, son, between fantasy and reality. See, I'm wearing a bat suit, but that doesn't make me Batman.
Well, I know that, but... Well, you might as well be Batman. Like you said, you have a bat cave, you work really hard, you never go to sleep, and sometimes you forget to eat, and you keep us safe like Batman keeps people safe.
When you put it like that, I guess I am a little bit like Batman.
I'm glad it's raining now so that your suit wouldn't get ruined.
Oh yeah, me too. Do you like it?
Mm-hmm. But actually, I like your other costume better. You know, the Adam West one?
But this one's cool and edgy. That suit's so campy.
Yeah, but that one is like you. You're like Batman, but you're not dark.
Well, sometimes you have to be dark, though. You know, you don't always have a choice but to be dark.
That's weird.
What's weird?
Well, you usually say that you always have a choice. So which is it?
Well, right now you don't have a choice. You've got to go to bed. So consider yourself tucked in. Good night. Sleep good. And I'll see you tomorrow.
Good night, Bat Dad.
Good night, son. Dear Motherless Demon Waif, I'm still reading prologue and setup material, not quite into Knightfall proper, but I'm finally into some Batman. No vengeance or sword of anybody else in the title, just good old Batman. But it still doesn't primarily feature Batman himself, as Bruce is in real bad shape, physically and emotionally, and needs a bunch of bed rest before he can go crime fighting again. The big ideas for the epic Knightfall event are seated some in the two pieces we've already covered, but they're driven home here. Batman's unquenchable drive, his human limitations versus the image of the elemental creature of the night he projects, and the notion that because of that undeniable mortality, he just can't do this forever, and someone else is inevitably going to take his place. Be it another Batman who fights for what he believes in, or someone with the same strength and commitment he has, but someone who looks to rule Batman's city rather than protect it. When you make the heart of a city one man, there's a void to be filled when he's gone, and any way you slice it, whether the next guy's actions are noble or sinister, that city has to beat with a different heart once the original is gone. He can wear the same clothes and call himself by the same name, but it's never going to feel or be the same again. I was surprised to see Jean-Paul Valley put on the Batsuit the very next time we see him, and go up against Bane no less. Baffling to consider this issue also isn't included in the unaltered but most recent Knightfall trades. I call this prologue material, it honestly feels like this is where the story really starts. I mean, I suppose the true inciting incident is Bruce getting his back broken and Valley taking over as Batman, but that's a first act plot point before it's an effective in medias res opening. As I said with Vengeance of Bane, Bane isn't just a plot device, and Batman isn't dumbed down or artificially weakened so Bane can take him on. This issue establishes that Bruce isn't at 100% right now, and Mensch comes up with a totally believable and compelling reason. Bruce has pushed himself to his limits. He's so driven, he's incapable of resting, almost as if he's psyched himself out to believe what he wants his enemies to, that he's invincible, that he doesn't need food or sleep. and there's nothing he can't handle. Bruce's psychiatrist, Dr. Kinsolving, believes in holistic medicine, but concedes that Bruce will have to take sedatives to force himself to rest, because he can't explain to her exactly why he's so restless and talking through his problems isn't helping. I'm sure that's mostly because he can't talk about what's really going on. She hits the nail on the head when she answers his vague explanation. I guess I'm driven with, at this point, it may border on being obsessed. He's naturally guarded about his parents' murder and doesn't want to discuss it. I imagine partly because he deals with that through action, not by talking about it, but also, of course, because the closer someone psychoanalyzes him, the closer they might get to his secret identity. But despite the wall he puts up, Bruce looks as vulnerable as ever, uncharacteristically doubting himself and worried that he's falling apart. His exchange with Kinsolving is the best writing in the issue. The psychiatrist is genuine and totally credible, as she manages to get inside Bruce's head without understanding what truly drives him. She acknowledges Bruce's astounding mental discipline and self-control when she says any normal person would have snapped by now. She says that before he brings up his parents' murder, and she's forgotten about that up until now. I like how we get there. Bruce, as self-defeated as you ever see him, tells her he thinks maybe he already has snapped, and she says, if so, you've done it with aplomb and grace, seeking treatment rather than taking an assault rifle into some shopping mall. And Bruce replies with the only line that immediately follows. Everybody say it with me, I hate guns. It's risky to humanize Bruce this way because what's so endearing about Batman is his determination, that stubborn ability to fight through anything and everything, no matter how little sleep he's had or how beaten up he is. He's the protagonist who is so committed to his cause he refuses to change, no matter what. But this isn't Bruce questioning his convictions, he's questioning his mortality. Realistically, how long can he possibly carry on this way? The mistake a lot of Batman writers invariably make, as he's jumping over rooftops through fever and bullet wounds and chicken pox and being impaled through the chest with a harpoon, is making him invincible. If Batman's drive becomes the equivalent of getting a superstar in Mario, he's as untouchable as Superman. We're just pretending he doesn't have any superpowers. Bruce has to push the natural mental and physical abilities of the average human being as far as they can go. But he has to have limits, or the obstacles he overcomes become arbitrary and easy. Bruce's dilemma especially resonates with me today of all days, because I too feel close to burnout, and I'm trying to figure out how to keep going without losing myself to my work. Bruce even uses those words with Kinsolving. He's as afraid as I am that at some point he'll just burn out. I like this as a commentary on aging, on doing the same thing so long and with such intensity that no matter how hard you fight against it, your mortality will catch up with you. And that if you don't have some humility and acknowledge your boundaries, you'll become a liability and destroy everything you've worked so hard for. That's what Batman risks here. Gotham still needs Batman, whether it's Bruce Wayne or not, and he's put himself out of commission just by pushing himself too hard for too long. I love that the event that really gets the ball rolling here isn't the big villain fight he'll have later or some elaborate scheme working against him, but only himself. Batman is his own worst enemy here, with an internal crisis that foreshadows the external crisis he'll have later, when a Batman outside of himself will become his adversary. None of this would have happened if Bruce had been able to pace himself, to find a balance in his life. But then the question becomes, if he doesn't push himself beyond his limits, is he still Batman? Batman may be whatever he's perceived to be, but he wouldn't have his reputation and the city wouldn't rely on him without that. So didn't he have to go that far to be as irreplaceable in Gotham as Superman is in Metropolis? And a side note, I really appreciate this story going on just as the superhero community is mourning the death of Superman. We see Robin and even Valley wearing the black armbands in tribute after Superman was killed by Doomsday. I like that Alfred is discussing the unthinkable possibility of a Gotham without Batman, just as we're living in the world without Superman. Which was the whole point of killing Superman off, to see how the world at large responded to losing that symbol of hope. And happily, while we're exploring some similar ideas to Death of Superman in taking Bruce off the board, it's not the same story, and it doesn't come to the same conclusions. Superman sacrificed himself in trying to stop a nigh unstoppable force of nature. Batman is going to be taken out of commission because he wasn't on top of his game when he went up against a foe as committed to proving himself superior to Batman as Batman is to protecting his city. I'd like to think Superman's death might have something to do with Bruce's lack of focus and inability to rest, but if so, it's not brought up here, and it's totally in his head. I also like the idea that this is just one more way the world is losing itself, as it has to go on without that beacon of hope. I can't seem to get away from characters who go to hell or think they're in hell. This story opens with similar nightmare bat imagery to some of what I read in Vengeance of Bane, which Killer Croc sees in the sewer, believing he must be dead. Nope, you're not in hell, Croc. Although you might be in a purgatory of your own making. That's what happens when you try to prove your moxie to the reigning mob boss by taking on Batman like he's as easy to take out as the alligators you used to wrestle. After that fight, he wound up in the lowest place he could possibly go, and lost his sense of reality for a few months, having nightmares about Batman. Sort of like Bane's visions of the Bat-God creature, except Croc is haunted by Batman and terrified of him, and Bane sees Batman as a champion to be conquered, like Croc once did. This Croc, by the way, isn't the modern-day Killer Croc we're used to. Sometimes he's a mutant crocodile man, and sometimes he's just a guy with a skin condition. But these days, he looks a lot more reptilian, regardless of his origins. This guy is just a big wrestler macho type with green skin. He used to have delusions of grandeur, as Burt describes for Bane, hoping to take over Gotham's underworld from the Squid. Wait, the Squid? Like the man who killed Batman from the animated series, that sniveling weasel voiced by Matt Frewer? I didn't read those issues, but I'm assuming this Squid is way more imposing. Like in Spawn Year, I don't have any way to look stuff up since my computer has been hijacked by an existential Riddler virus and I can't get a signal on my Cap phone. Yeah, I said Cap phone, like the Bat phone, except mine doesn't glow red and it does a lot more than make and receive calls only from other bat phones. Croc is motivated completely by his insecurities about his appearance. He only cares about power because if he had it, it would strengthen his reputation. He can't handle that thugs on the street won't take him seriously on account of his being a crudface. There is not a more early 90s insult than crudface. It might sound lame by today's more sophisticated standards of mocking, but every time Croc hears it, surprisingly, it's the only thing any of his bullies comes up with to call him. He goes all Marty McFly when somebody calls him chicken. Also not as biting today as it was in 1985. He apparently beat the Squid, but as Bird tells it, the street punks wouldn't fall in line. So that's when he had the brilliant notion to take down Batman to impress them. So now that Croc is back, knows for sure he's not in hell, but just a Gotham slum, easy mistake, and on a rampage, Bane decides to take down a guy who almost took down Batman to prove his worthiness to take down Batman. I'm not sure I buy that the Bane I met in Vengeance would bother with this. I wouldn't think he'd have anything to prove to anyone but himself, and the one man he thinks has any chance at being his better. But we need to set up a precedent for Jean-Paul in the Batsuit. We need to have his first encounter with Bane so we can establish that Bane knows the difference between the real Batman and a phony, and we need to get a sense of what Bane can do without actually fighting Bruce or Valley yet, because either of them would get demolished right now by Bane, like Croc does, who gets an arm effortlessly broken as soon as Bane venoms up, maybe a whole 20 seconds into their confrontation. The issue ends with Bane confirming the reason Bruce fights so hard and operates like he's more than human when he says there is only one Batman. And I love that that's intercut with the final panel, Bruce sweating and delirious in bed, begging for help while having a nightmare. This is wonderfully dramatic. There is only one Batman, but perhaps Bruce has lost what makes him Batman, and so that's not him anymore. I like that Bruce's stuff of nightmares is the same as Croc's. Batman is bigger than he is, and as it's consumed his enemies, it's maybe even consumed him. Valley, who Nomaz told was Azrael because he acted as Azrael, doesn't know how to be Batman. Bane has studied Batman, and even though he's only met him once before this, can tell straight away that Valley is an imposter, so Bane doesn't bother with him. Although I may be giving him too much credit. It's entirely possible that what gave Valley away is his one bare leg. Batman always wears gray leggings on both legs. No idea why Robin only gave him most of a batsuit, but that's honestly entirely on him. We also get a taste of Bane's sense of humor here. I might have expected after that lack of a childhood and ultra-concentrated willpower that he had none. But he gets in a monosyllabic quip when he brutally discards Croc in a pile of plush toys at a toy store and says, "Stuff you." That's an appropriate setting because while everyone else there is fighting their hardest and Bane is a tremendous threat to all three of them, Croc, Robin, and Valley, they're just playthings to Bane. Compared to him, Croc is a total loser, pathetically obsessed with what other people think of him and fueled entirely by unchecked emotion. He wants what Bane wants, to best the Batman and to take over the city. but he's Bane's opposite in every way, lacking in self-control, in confidence, in determination, and because of all of that, in intimidation. I wonder if Doug Mensch and the other writers plotting these stories together didn't think Croc should be put right up front here, because he's another big, muscular, brutish villain, and some fans might misconstrue Bane being too much like him, so they'd better prove how much more of a threat he is than Croc, and how much more worthy he is to be the man who will eventually best Batman, just as Bane himself is trying to prove that, by contrasting them immediately. All in all, it's an exciting introduction to Bane into the main Batman title and to some of the principal players, and a fascinating look into the conflicted and fatigued mind of the world's greatest detective. So did you pick up on any subtle subtext here? Question mark man. I know why you picked this material, but in the end, I think it's going to prove my point before it proves yours. You can talk about how I've lost my mojo until you're blue in the face, but even if you're right, you can't replace me with that phony upstairs, if that's your big master plan. He's not me. And it doesn't matter how much he eats my food or sleeps in my bed. There's only one Batman, and there's only one Captain Logan. Signed, me, the only me, Captain Logan.